1, 2, 1, 2, go. Hello, ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Hello, ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba.
Welcome to Tourism Talk. I'm Laura Schomburg, Marketing Director at the Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now you can connect with your creativity in the world's 7th city of crafts and folk art with 5 new, unforgettable, and immersive experiences designed exclusively for groups. Today, we have the Paducah CVB team here with experiential expert Joe Veneto to unveil these exciting new tours. We have Mary Hammond, CVB Executive Director, Fowler Black, CVB Sales Director, and Joe Veneto, the Opportunity Guy. Welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you all for being here. I guess let's get started by introducing Joe. Joe, you have an exciting title there, the Opportunity Guy. Tell us a little bit about your background in the tourism industry and how you became involved in experiential tourism.
Well, I started out in the industry in 1979. My job was as a tour director, and I tell people that I took busloads of beautiful bingo card carrying women and a few men on motor coach and air tours throughout North America. Now at the time, I didn't realize it, but spending a lot of time on the road allowed me to get a keen sense of what people were really looking for. And so as a result, fast forward, 2004, I started working in the experiential space. And what was happening, I noticed, is that consumers were changing. Their tastes were changing. What they were looking for were changing. And as a result, today's consumers they're really experience junkies. So as a result, people are looking not for, I call it a vanilla vacation. They're really looking for behind the scenes, hands-on, I want to do what the locals are doing, or maybe VIP me. And those are kind of the experiences or the attributes, if you will, that kind of set the stage for what I call experiential tourism.
That's great. I think a lot of us can relate to that, those shareable experiences, the things that you want to tell your Facebook friends about and you want to brag about. The experiential aspect. As a creative city, we talk a lot about creative tourism and what that means. Mary, I know you have a great definition of that.
Well, it comes actually from UNESCO and from the very first Creative Tourism Conference. It was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, 6 years ago. The UNESCO Creative Cities Program is 10 years old, which is interesting because, Joe, you were so on top of it at beginning your experiential tourism 10 years ago.
Thank you, Mary. I had no idea.
But just thinking back to where we were as a community 10 years ago, the Carson Center was just opening their doors. Dr. Renzulli was the first out-of-town artist to relocate in the Lower Town Arts District. So a lot of things, Paducah was changing. Our quilt museum had just become the National Quilt Museum of the United States. Everything was stepping up, and we really needed to look at what creative tourism. Rosemarie Steele, Robin Malpass went to the Creative Cities Conference in Santa Fe, where they brought back this definition, and I really like it. Creative tourism includes more access to culture or history, involves doing something experientially, and an authentic engagement in the real culture of the city. And that's when we saw that Paducah has a very real, authentic culture. And that was behind our quest to become a UNESCO Creative City.
Yes.
So the timing here really came together. I learned about your Experience Lab, spoke with Fowler Black about it, encouraged Fowler to go. He came back with stories that I can repeat. I know his stories and his experiences in Columbus, Ohio, and I knew we wanted those experiences in Paducah.
Absolutely.
It was really emotional. They are to me today, Fowler. Your telling of those stories, I kept them. I know them.
Well, everyone can relate to a common experience in which something made them feel different and good, and I think people always they may not remember what you say, but they remember the way you made them feel. And I think that the way that Joe helps to guide and engineer experiences plays that card and allows, as he would say, the visitor to fill their emotional bank account. So I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, Joe.
Well, you know what, Fowler and Mary, you hit it on the head. I mean, really, the essence of experiential tourism, and in this case, creative tourism, it's about creating that profound connection with your visitor. And when a visitor has a profound connection, what happens is we're putting deposits in their emotional bank account. And at the end of the day, when they've had a great experience in Paducah, they can remember it, they can repeat it, and they can refer other visitors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the key to it. You know, we're always at the CVB, we're charged with bringing people into Paducah to experience this place. And we think about how, as a UNESCO Creative City, we've been recognized for preserving our cultural heritage and also for looking sustainably towards the future. And this is such a perfect way for us to nurture that creativity in our visitors and really engage them in the destination in a new way. I know, Fowler, we've been sharing some insights on creativity with some TED Talks and that sort of thing, and this goes right along with that. Is there anything you'd want to share about why this is so important?
Well, I think that the raw material exists here. I mean, every place has thousands of stories to tell. A lot of it is in how you tell it. And I think that working with our partners, we've got incredible raw material. And the 5 experiences that you mentioned in the beginning of the show entail 5 of our nonprofit attractions. That includes the Hotel Metropolitan, the Civil War Museum, the National Quilt Museum, the River Discovery Center, and the Iser Art Center. And so the culture and the creativity that exist in all those attractions are there. It's just shaping, sculpting, and engineering it in a way that that is unforgettable to the visitor. And I think that that's what Joe's 4 visits here to Paducah have directed us toward.
That's great. Joe, could you take us through that process a little bit? Just kind of a brief overview of how this past year or so has gone.
Yeah, it's gone really well. I mean, your partners, well, let me stop and kind of back up. I will say Paducah is just, it's a wonderful community. And you can feel the creative energy. It's part of the DNA of the community. And, you know, there are some interesting things that have happened here. You know, Lower Town, the artists, the Quilt Museum, just amazing fiber art, and the river. So when we looked at who those experiences would be, we really kind of looked at the essence of Paducah. And when we did that, we worked with each of the organizations and took them through the process. Now, we have a little bit of a formula. It's called the Experience Formula, and there's 3 parts to it. The first part is create the connection. So how do you create impactful connections throughout the entire experience? The second is nurture the narrative. What stories should you tell? What stories are important to the sense of place for each of the organizations? And then third is find the feelings. So how can you get the visitor to a visceral level? And when you do those 3 things, you sort of hit a sweet spot. I use a Venn diagram. And when you do all those things, you create what I call an unforgettable experience. So over the past 4 months, 5 months, we've been actually taking each of the partners through this process. So they've been uncovering their stories, they've created a script, and then we're in the process right now of actually staging and polishing each of the experiences so that when the visitor comes in, they're going to have a pretty impactful experience.
That's great. Fowler, would you want to give a rundown of those 5 attractions and who has been involved in this process?
Sure. I mentioned the Hotel Metropolitan, Civil War Museum, National Quilt Museum, River Discovery Center, and the Iser Art Center. All of them have very different offerings, but relate to the essence of Paducah, as Joe said. Of course, the river being the lifeblood of Paducah, the River Discovery Center has has a program that would take the visitor from the mound builders early on in Paducah all the way up to a very technologically advanced river operation like a towboat pilot, would experience on the river through a simulator. But again, it's how you present that in a way, and that is the scripting and staging that we've gone through with Joe. With the National Quilt Museum, people, Joe calls it show and tell. That is sort of a thing of the past. People want to engage and immerse themselves in something like that. And so we want to give them that VIP behind the scenes, meet an expert kind of experience. And that's what they'll be able to do at the National Quilt Museum, is actually go in, sort of have the white glove tour, and then even on an immersive level, go in and work with the fiber in a classroom, and ultimately take something home that is both useful and memorable. With the Civil War Museum, of course, that's the bedrock and the cornerstone of the living plot of Paducah, what happened during the Civil War. And the stories that are being told there are stories that every Paducan, I think, should know. So if you're local, you should certainly just go visit just to know the content. And Hotel Metropolitan, of course, is a story about the segregation era in Paducah, and the list of names of guests at that hotel are pretty mind-blowing when you look at it, and so that's going to be an experience that's set up in a way where you enter almost enter not a museum but a theater in a way. Though it's telling an accurate story of the past, you enter a living history, and that is, there's no way that you cannot be engaged from the moment you walk in the door. So that's a quick rundown of some of the things that we're doing, and I think that this is something, taking it what is show and tell to something that is more experiential, engaging, immersive, or vanilla to Ben and Jerry's, as Joe would say.
I think all of those really hit on that active participation and how this travel experience can truly be transformative and bring Paducah to life and to importance in a new way in people's minds. Mary, I know you've been in destination marketing here for a long time, and this is a very new frontier. How do you see it, I guess, taking us forward into the future?
I have to think about that.
Yeah.
It's we were doing this on a very low scale compared to what we've stepped it up to being. This makes Paducah memorable. It takes what we are really known for, what our core of who we are as a people, what sets us apart as a people, as a city, a river city, where people passed through in the past, left portions of their culture, and as our city began to grow, the people who came here helped build this wonderful cultural city. These 5 attractions are by no means the only attractions. There are others, and for-profit businesses that are using this concept on a smaller basis and have done it successfully. These happen to be our partners right now, but we're learning from it, and I think others in our city will learn from this experience. It will grow. And
I think that, certainly experiential opportunities have existed in Paducah before, yes, but this is being geared toward a specific niche of visitors, not necessarily the individual visitor coming in, stopping in Paducah, but maybe a group of visitors, whether it be a meeting, a convention, spousal tour, or group tour on a motor coach. So these are prearranged events, really, that can take advantage of some of these opportunities. The National Quilt Museum they have held workshops for a long time, but that's really been for the enthusiast quilter. We want Paducah to be accessible. We want our culture and creativity and spirit of creativity to be accessible, and that is what our destination's hook is. And so that's really what this effort is for, is to bring others to it and expose them to it, especially whoever's coming in mass.
Absolutely.
Many of our attractions have done this for schools and done it very well, but this has stepped it up that an adult group would enjoy and remember, talk about.
Definitely.
But the school programs across the city are wonderful. I mean, all of them, Market House Theater, Quilt Museum, the Carson Center, they're all participating with students and with great success. So this is just an adult version.
Yeah, and people often ask us as the CVB what the UNESCO Creative Cities designation means. And I think that as the marketing director, I see this as such a great platform to translate that title, that level of designation that we have now, into something that is accessible. And like you said, the students in the community have been experiencing this at many of these attractions for a long time, but to make it accessible to our visitors, to groups, and Fowler, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that in a minute, is really, it's an exciting thing to see it translate in that way so that people can make sense of what UNESCO is all about. Because their whole mission is to highlight these cities that are connecting people through creativity and through engagement in culture. So I think this is such an exciting development. And Fowler, if you could just talk a little bit about how a group or a meeting might incorporate these tours.
Sure. A group tour, of course, you know, if it's in the leisure market, they're going to be looking at attractions anyway. If they want a, you know, sort of the off the beaten path experience, they can access it through the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so I'm selling some of these experiences coming up in January at the American Bus Association. So I'll talk to tour operators on the marketplace floor to showcase that we have new product to offer them. And so they, through discussion with me and then ultimately in contact with the partner, we can make those arrangements. If it's a convention or meeting where their sole purpose in being in Paducah is about business, but maybe at night they want a special offering, this is a perfect situation to use something like the Hotel Metropolitan or National Quilt Museum, or an opportunity to discover what the river is all about. So I think that it's sort of a versatile offering, and it can be offered in the morning, at night, whenever it's convenient for them. So I think that's Joe's point, is to make it versatile, is to make it accessible, and so we are currently in the stage of marketing and selling and coming up with a formula for getting the word out.
Laura, in addition to, you know, the great information that Fowler has just mentioned about certain groups, I also want to make mention that, you know, your local audience, your local groups also can have access to these 5 experiences. If you have a family reunion that's coming to town, or maybe there's a wedding, a destination wedding, could be a sports team, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, more on the student side, but again, local. Or if there is an employee association or a girlfriends group or a couples club, that local market is perfect for each of these experiences. You know, you may have visitors or locals who have been to these attractions, and now they can experience them on a deeper level. There'll be minimums, so maybe the minimum is 10 people or 15 people, but the key is that they are, in fact, accessible. And finally, let me just say, you know, one of the great things about this project, you know, to Mary's credit and Fowler, you know, they looked at accessibility. And with this amazing UNESCO Creative Cities destination and designation, you know, many destinations have taken that, promoted it, and marketed it. But there are very few that have actually said, what can our tourists, what can our visitors do? What can they buy? And really the key to making this designation really pop is getting the visitor to experience it. And so at the heart of all of this is creating these experiences that really get the visitor into the experience, that are part of that.
And ultimately means economic impact for our community, which is what the bottom line is all about as well. Not only are we taking our culture and preserving it for the future and sharing our culture, but we're adding to the pocketbook of our attractions, our restaurants, our hotels, our retail shops. So this is all about economic impact in the bottom line. But you've worked with other communities?
Yes. We've worked with, I'd say, probably about 12.5 communities around the country. Some very large, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, but others small. Shreveport, Louisiana, Tuscarawas, Ohio, and large or small, it's really getting to the essence of the experience, the essence of what that destination or that sense of place is all about, and then bringing it up to an experiential level. You know, as Fowler said, engage and or immerse the visitor so that they feel that they've experienced a destination and that they can walk away with their stories about the story.
And that really is finding the feeling, as he mentioned earlier, like the third peg, and once you do that, it's pretty easy. I mean, in my own case, going to Columbus, Ohio, where Joe has worked, you know, there's an old home there that was part of the Underground Railroad, and the way they presented it was so. There was a surprise element that was factored in, and because of that, you know, we ended up unexpectedly going down into the cellar of this old home. It started off as sort of your normal historic home tour where you're learning about the furnishings of the home, and it's authentic, and you've got a guided a tour guide who's in dress, but then all of a sudden the energy changes, and so you hear someone yelling from downstairs, and she has everybody file down the stairs all the way down to the root cellar, and you're in this dark brick root cellar, and you hear banging on the back door, and it's commotion and chaos, and in a quiet voice, the tour guide says, "I will be right back. In the meantime, so-and-so over in the corner will keep you company." And she goes out, and there's an underground, there's a slave who comes out from the corner, and then she proceeds to tell about her own experience. Well, that surprise factor, that change in energy, really tapped into the emotion and the feeling, and that is precisely what made me tell the story to someone else like Mary, who hasn't forgotten it. So we want to be able to give that to our visitors as well in our own authentic way that relates to our sense of place, and I think that we can do it.
I still picture you at the ballet.
Now, Mary.
But Columbus did have some very nice stories, and because Fowler has expressed them, we have remembered them. And if I have a chance to go there, the opportunity to go and experience them myself, I will, because I think that he's got me enthused about it. So this is exactly what we hope that our visitors will do, go and talk about the Paducah experience. I loved what Betty Dobson said to us about how you've helped her, that every time someone came in the door, she didn't have to tell every single story, but she could tell one story that really hit home with the people, one story that they really carried out the door with them when they left, instead of every piece of the history of the Hotel Metropolitan.
Yeah, Mary, you're absolutely right. I mean, we call these core stories, and every experience needs to have 2, 3, maybe 4 sort of core stories that you're able to remember and repeat. You know, a lot of times people, when they're presenting their museum or their historic home, they sort of hose you down, you know, like a fire hose. And really, a couple of great stories well told that can be remembered and repeated, that's what people want. Remembered and repeated to other people, and then if you were to meet somebody else who's had that experience, you could share that experience with them. It's almost like seeing a great movie. You know, if the four of us had seen a movie, any movie, but we hadn't seen it together, you know, we could have a glass of wine or a beer and sit around, and we could recount the scenes in the movie, and we'd all know what it was about. Same way with your visitors.
Who would have thought mound builders? You know, when you think about the River Discovery Center, you don't think about them including who was on this river before we were, who were some of the first cultures. And I love that that's a story that they're sharing at the River Discovery Center.
Right.
I love that the Iser Art Center is looking at art outside of the building, that they're looking at our 24/7 art, our flood wall.
That connection.
And taking some of those stories and really making them come alive. I have to say, some of the stories that the flood wall tells, finally, I understand some of those glimpses of history. And I have my favorite panels that just, yes, I understand that glimpse into history because of that particular artwork. And so it's our experiences, our 5 experiences are across the board. They're varied. And I think we're really hitting home with them.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, you're talking about the stories create that connection, right? As human beings, there's this innate curiosity that we all have, and then there's this connection to us as humans. When you think about it, you know, how is it that we can read a book or see a movie about people that have lived hundreds of years ago? And yet this is exactly what these experiences are going to do. They're going to tell Paducah's story. Very different, very unique, depending on each of the experiences. And yet, people will be able to see themselves in that story and connect on a real human level.
Connect to this place. And I think that's what it's all about. We're so excited to have talked about this today and unveiled it, and we can't wait for people to learn more. Paducah.travel/groups. You can get an idea of all these experiences and see all those levels that you can engage yourself and your groups in. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, Laura.
We'll see
Laura,
you next
thanks
time.
a lot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba